Just felt with them centre forwards, you score goals all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, we might concede, but I always felt with them forwards, you give them service.
Paul Scholes wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He battled injuries and defied all odds. But what kind of injuries did he suffer from? And how does a football player even manage debilitating injuries, yet keep moving forward? Grit and effort. Let's dig deep into Scholes. It all started in Salford, way back in '74, right here in Greater Manchester. See, Scholes, as they call him, has a touch of the Emerald Isle in his blood, both Irish and Northern Irish heritage running through his veins. That is some strong stock if ever there was. Long before this, however, football was not the only game in which young Paul excelled. Cricket, well, he could whack a six with the best of them. Although at 14 came a turn, one of those twists of fate, if you will. Scholes started training with the mighty Manchester United. Now that's where magic truly began. Can you imagine those butterflies bopping around that began a dance in his stomach as he stepped onto those hallowed grounds? Well, Scholes wasn't some starry-eyed teenager. Laid back and committed, mind. So, while he was attending school, Cardinal Langley Roman Catholic no less, he got picked to represent Great Britain in the national schools football team. Talk about setting bars high, eh? Please like and subscribe because there is more to this story as we're just scratching the surface. Here we go. Grab some popcorn, pour some tea. He lived and breathed Manchester United his whole career. More than 150 goals, 700 appearances. The man just put a hole in that red jersey. Trophies, loads of them. A record 11 Premier Leagues, more than any English player ever. FA Cups, Champions Leagues, the lot. But Scholes was more than just medals. He was a midfield maestro. Silky skills, pinpoint passing, a football brain sharper than a butcher's knife, and long-range screamers that left keepers looking like startled pigeons. One of Fergie's fledglings, he made his debut in 94-95 and went on to become United's third highest appearance maker. He retired in 2011 and had a spell of coaching, but the pitch called him back for one last season in 2012. England caps? He has those too. In the end, it was family and United that stole his heart. This football guy, however, wasn't definitely going to back down. Asthma threatening to hold back every breath, a wonky knee, Osgood Schlatter, incentives don't get much meaner, paining with each kick and run. Now most of us would buckle under that pressure. Scholes almost impossible to stop. And then his eyesight. Now this gets a bit scary. Back in 2006, United tried to act all cool, but behind closed doors they were really worried. Turns out Scholes' vision had been blurry since December, so bad that they stuck him on complete football rest until April. I mean bombshell. Now, missing the remainder of the season meant he wouldn't be match fit for a return in May. This was to be a disaster waiting for manager Sir Alex Ferguson. He was already without midfielders, and with John O'Shea out for weeks because of broken ribs, it was a bad time. Williams informed that Ferguson kept insisting the problem wasn't serious, only giving that bump on the head from the game, but then one of the most experienced eye specialists couldn't figure it out. Then finally, the club came clean. Scholes had a medical condition, something wrong with one of his eyes, and it had absolutely nothing to do with football. Now, obviously, they wouldn't go into detail about what the problem actually was, but suddenly losing your vision as a footballer? Blimey, he looked like he was hanging by a thread. But Scholes, different gravy. Somehow a blurry vision sharpened his focus instead. An iron will, indomitable human spirit, mental strength, and dedication, would you say that? The guy is fighting against his body and senses, and he comes out to become Manchester United's legend. Wonder what he could have done had he been healthy all the way. Blimey, you wouldn't believe the sight Scholes had to contend with last season. Here is the bloke, pinging passes like a dream 1 minute, and then the next, seeing double. Spooky, right? It turns out Scholes suffered from blurred vision all through the entire season, a right nasty surprise, one that almost brought a close to his playing career. Now Scholes learned to cope with it, mind you, but the kicker, it could be with him for good. That's a right worry for any footballer, especially one who relies on pinpoint accuracy like Scholes. Remember that FA Cup final against Arsenal 2 years back? He was the only one who missed the penalty, still gives him chills. But back to the blurry vision. Even United kitted him out with some fancy eye training machine at the training ground. Top-notch gear, you see. It's an eye reactor, Scholes explained, a shade of determination in his voice. Didn't have to use it, but I did. Got to keep on top of things, innit? Imagine the fear, eh? Losing your career to something like that? Scholes described it as quite worrying, but you know him, a man of few words. All right. That is how he described his incredible performances last season. League title, FA Cup final, proper storybook ending, wouldn't you say? Remember it clear as day, Scholes said, rewinding the clock all the way back. Birmingham game, last 10 minutes, the ball coming towards him, then suddenly, bam, 3 or 4 balls appear out of nowhere. Migraine, that's what he thought at first. But the blurry vision wouldn't budge, so off he went to a specialist. Turned out there was some bleeding behind his right eye due to a blocked vein. Not ideal. Worrying, Scholes admitted, not just for his career, but for his family too. All sorts of questions the specialists were asking, family history and whatnot. But then they figured it out. A small chance it could end his career. Scholes, though, never one to give up. Always thought I'd be back, he said, a glint in his eye. There's still a bit of blur, but I'm used to it now. 6 months off, they told him, complete rest. Nasty business, but Scholes came back refreshed, some might even say better than ever. 3rd for Player of the Year, as voted by fellow players. Quite the story of redemption, if I do say so myself. Looking back, Scholes pondered, the break did me good. Played a long time without a breather, you see. Gave me time to think about things and appreciate just how lucky I am to be doing this. I was 33 in November and can't go on forever, maybe 2 or 3 years more at most. I was soaking it all in. Well, that season was a right corker for Scholes, in contrast to the earlier ones when Chelsea seemed to run away with the league. No fun for any United player, that's for sure. This year, though, the leading role at the front end speaks volumes, hungry for that Premier League title, raging and brimming full of confidence, not like those years of wobbly patches and crisis talk. Well, Scholes has been an integral part of that success, but I suppose what you may wonder is why he wouldn't answer England's call. In 2004, at just the tender age of 29, having won loads of caps, he called it quits. Why turn his back on them? Lost the joy of playing for England. That is his answer. He still watched the games. He felt for the lads. Something wasn't right. He even spoke with new manager Steve McLaren, but in the end decided to stay with United. England's loss, as they say, is United's gain. Scholes may not be that lung-bursting midfielder of old. Ferguson has even put the little fella on a no-tackling rule to save him from those pesky yellows and red cards. It is his new role, alongside Michael Carrick, where he exactly fits in. With the FA Cup final pending, he was most vital in the United machine. Remember that niggling knee injury way back in 2007? Had Scholes out of action for much of the season. The man, however, acted like his second birth in 2008, like a real phoenix out of ashes. Playing in the Champions League was a blind one. Scoring at home to Barcelona in the semis, now wasn't that pressure-tastic. United won the trophy that year, and Scholes was right at things. Now the honours started pouring again, as if as relentless as a Manchester downpour. Inducted into the English Football Hall of Fame in 2008, racked up United's 600 appearances. That is some serious loyalty, if you ask me. The goals were just coming and coming, not only in the Premier League, but also in the Champions League too. At that time, he was set to become the highest-scoring midfielder ever. Little surprise that United slapped a new contract on the table in 2010. It seemed that Scholes finally decided to retire at the end of the 2010-2011 campaign. How the thought of a potential red card in the FA Cup semi-final must have annoyed him. Then he played that farewell game against the New York Cosmos. What a send-off for a legend. And then, out of the blue, remember the time when you had that ball pumping around with your friends? The itch that you cannot stop scratching? Scholes got it too. He came out of retirement in 2012 after training with United's reserves, Back he came like a role model son and even managed to score on his comeback. This time, he helped United win another Premier League title and fitting end to the glorious second stint. However, come May 2013, the final curtain fell. He finally hung up his boots for good. Scholes hasn't gone all Alan Shearer, though, just retreated to a life of luxury yachts and golf courses. Mind you, he's had a little dabble at management. He took charge of Oldham Athletic for a bit back in 2019, but things didn't quite click. The same story with Salford City, the club he co-owns with other United legends. He became their interim head coach back in 2020, but was back at square one after a month. What next for Scholes? Will he ever be back in a dugout, making decisions as a manager in his own right? Or is he going to remain at Salford City and drive them higher through the footballing ladder? Only time will tell, mates. One thing, though, is certain. Paul Scholes, the midfield maestro, forever shall be a Manchester United legend, a real, genuine football icon. That's it for this one. If you like football legends, wait till you see our video on Jimmy Case. It's worth the salt.